This is the Fantasy Roadshow.
Hey, welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Roadshow. We are your boys here. You can call me Truck, and I am inside of a truck at work currently getting that money. And I'm always joined by Shane O'Mac, and today we're talking Week 15, red light, green light. Fantasy playoffs are here. Hopefully they didn't start for you last week during a bye week because that's, rubbish. Make sure that doesn't happen. But, bye weeks are done. We got a full slate this week. Playoffs. We hope you made the playoffs. I know we made the playoffs in quite a few leagues. So we're going to help you here today talking about all players we don't like, players we do like. But before we do that, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, support us on social media. We really appreciate it. You guys are the best. Shane O'Mac, how you doing, buddy?
Good. Yes, week one of the playoffs. I also like for this week, week one, I like the division of games on Sunday. We get 7 noon games. We get 5 late window games. So wow. I like that more even kind of setup, as some weeks you might only get a couple, 3, maybe 3 games in the late window. So we've got more to watch in the late window, which is nice.
Like that.
So and then we get two Monday night games.
2 Monday night games. Okay.
Yeah, so that's
there's a lot of really good games on the slate this week. Very excited for those. Thursday night football, right? I'm sure this videos will be out on Thursday. So the game tonight, the Los Angeles Rams at the San Francisco 49ers, divisional game. That should be a great game. But even then, I'm excited to watch Dallas and Carolina on Sunday at noon. You know what I mean? A lot of implications with some of these games. Buffalo and Detroit, 3:00 game. That is maybe a potential Super Bowl game right there between Buffalo and Detroit. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yep, pretty good.
But anyway, what other news we got? I saw something come about. Sincere McCormick is now getting the lead job. He has earned the job. Is that correct?
Yeah, Antonio Pierce on Wednesday had said that he has earned the RB1 job, the lead back role. So they had already placed Zamir White on IR, and I think what this means is that even if Madison is back this week for Monday night, that he will take a back seat and McCormick will be leading the way. So,
he didn't look bad last week.
No.
You know what I mean? I don't know if you watched that game, but he looked halfway decent. So, good on you. And let's score some fantasy points for guys that picked you up, right?
Yep.
All right. Well, other than that, there's not really much news going around in the NFL. Some injuries we got to monitor, but we are no injury experts, so we're not really going to break those down for you. Just something to monitor as the week goes. Make sure you watch practice reports and all that fun stuff, like always. But let's kick it right off. Shane, who do you not like this week? Red light quarterbacks. Who are you pumping the brakes on?
So I got 2 guys. First guy, I'm just not liking, and I've got him in a couple of leagues, and I made the mistake of starting him last week, and I will not make that mistake this week. That's Jordan Love. And for me, it's just a lot of it is based off of pass volume. The pass volume's not been there. He hasn't had more than 30 pass attempts in 5 out of his last 6 games. He's been 15 points or fewer in 2 out of the last 3 games. And then this Seattle defense, they're playing at home on a Sunday night. I think it's going to be a tough environment. They've been pretty good against the pass over the last 3 games. They've had 4 interceptions and only allowed 3 touchdowns from quarterbacks. So I just think this sets up for a tough game for Jordan Love.
Yeah, he's not getting much help from his wide receivers. They're just, Jaden Reed last week, 1 target for 0 yards.
Yeah.
Completely disappeared, but that happens to every one of those guys. You know what I mean? Dobbs can't stay on the field. Watson has trouble staying on the field, although he is healthy right now. Tucker Kraft is the bright spot for him, but he can only do so much in the passing game. So I completely understand where you're coming from there, and I would be very nervous to start him in the playoffs.
Yep.
My red light quarterback this week is C.J. Stroud, taking on Miami. C.J. Stroud just continues to struggle. 9 straight weeks he's finished outside the top 10. So he just can't get in that top 10 for quarterbacks. Last week we were like, hey, let's green light C.J. Stroud, right? Playing Jacksonville. Nope. Quarterback 25. Just brutal. And Miami is a really good pass defense. They're giving up the third fewest points per game to quarterbacks. Just not looking good for CJ Stroud this week against Miami, who's been playing a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I had Stroud also on mine. I think, and I'm seeing him started a lot still. And I think you got to pivot off of him. Like, he has not been. This was crazy when I saw this. He hasn't been over 17 points in 7 straight games. I mean, as your QB1, that's bad. And like you said, we greenlighted him against Jacksonville. I think he ended up with 14 points in that game.
I have him personally in one of my dynasty leagues. It's a 2-quarterback league. I have him and Jalen Hurts. And I've been keeping him in because he hasn't, although he hasn't been helping me win, he hasn't been causing me to lose. You know what I mean? So I've been keeping him as a QB2 because that's kind of what he is right now. But I mean, I have in the bench, I have Stafford. I have, I forget who else I have, but Stafford's one of the main guys that I've been considering subbing him in for. So I don't know. It's just tough sledding for Stroud. So my other guy is Russell Wilson. He's going against Philadelphia this week. 3 of the last 4 games, he's finished outside the top 12. He's one of those managers that he can get it done, but against a Philadelphia defense, the Eagles look like the best team in the NFL. They're giving up the third fewest passing yards per game to quarterbacks. I just, with his struggles recently and the defense he's playing against, I'm not having him in my lineup, even in a 2-quarterback league.
Yeah, not only on the road against Philadelphia, the good defense, but without his number 1 weapon, George Pickens will not be played. He's listed as doubtful to play. So
yeah, it's just all a recipe for disaster for Russell. Yeah. So, all right, well, let's pivot over to green light quarterbacks. Shane, who do you like this week? Who are you putting in for Stroud and Jordan Love?
The first guy I'm going with, and I think there's scenarios where you could play him based off of where you drafted him or picked him up in during the year. You could play him over other QB1s you drafted, and that's Sam Darnold. I think you're just getting so much good consistency. 19 or more fantasy points in 4 straight games. He had the huge game last week with 5 touchdowns. Last time they played the Bears, he finished the week as the QB6. This Bears defense in their last 3 games, they've given up the 3rd most passing yards per game. For me, he is my number 4 quarterback on the week. So that means I am starting him over guys like Jalen Hurts, or I would be starting him over Brock Purdy or Kyler Murray. So there's only Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow, the only quarterbacks I'd be starting over Sam Darnold this week.
Yeah, Chicago's defense, look, firing Eberflus was the right move, okay? But Eberflus, one thing he could do is call a defense, right? And losing him, I feel like, is a big hit to the defense, and we're seeing that last week. The stat everyone loves to throw out, the first half, 340 yards versus 4 yards of offense from the Bears. Giving up that many yards was the worst display of defense in the first half all season, and even last season too. So you're absolutely right, Sam Darnold. Oh, by the way, that was my bad last on Sunday when me and you were getting into it over Sam Darnold and who was it? Jameis Winston. I'll be the first one to admit that was my bad. I suggested starting Jameis Winston over Sam Darnold, and that was a bad move. So,
you got to offset it a little bit with your Jerry Jeudy take, so at least you got a small offset.
Hey, Jerry Jeudy played well. It's hard to deny his production. So you win some, you lose some, you get some right. We're stepping in the batter's box every week, so I just got to admit that because that was a funny one that we had on Sunday morning. By the way, we're live every Sunday at 10 a.m. here on YouTube and Twitter. Come join us. All right, well. My green light quarterback is more of a streamer. I am taking somebody who is very, very old and aging, and that's Mr. Aaron Rodgers. By the way, there's a documentary coming out about him called Enigma. Very excited to watch that. He is a fascinating human being. But he's playing Jacksonville this week, and I know CJ Stroud was quarterback 25 last week against Jacksonville, but that was a one-off thing. Aaron Rodgers is coming off one of his best games of the season. He finally threw for over 300 yards. Very, very intriguing to see. But Jacksonville giving up the 2nd most points per game to quarterbacks. They're giving up the 2nd most yards, the 3rd most touchdowns. They're just a bad defense overall. And with Rodgers coming off a good game, And it's just the mentality that Rodgers knows his days are numbered here in New York. He may not get a chance to play with Davante Adams ever again. So I feel like he's really going to take the most of this opportunity against a bad defense and kind of just ball out. So I'd be fine starting Aaron Rodgers in a tough spot this week.
Yep. The other guy I had one, and especially if you're playing in DFS, like get Tua. Tua is only a spot behind Sam Darnold in my rankings last 4 weeks. He's been a top 10 or better quarterback. He's had 3 straight games of 300-yard plus passing.
Oh, yeah.
Last 3 home games, 9 passing touchdowns. So he's given you 3 passing touchdowns per game, basically, over his last 3 home games. He's playing at home. Texans have allowed the most passing touchdowns this year, and over their last 3 games, they've allowed the 5th most passing yards per game. I think he is in for a huge week. And then, real quick, I think if you are stuck a lower level streaming guy that you had to pick up and play, I don't mind Caleb Williams even on the road at
You
Minnesota.
sure about that? Are you sure about that?
I know.
I just need to ask.
No,
last week was I want to say 60% of Chicago turned that game off at halftime, which is not the right move. You got to watch the whole game because there was that point in the third quarter going into the fourth where I was like, wow, before that last touchdown that San Francisco had, they didn't do much in that third quarter. And then they scored that dagger of a touchdown late, but Chicago had a chance to come back. They just stringed together a couple drives. Caleb still threw over 200 yards, even though he only had 4 yards in the first half. So
that's what I'm saying. He gets you these sneaky points. And the last time they played Minnesota, he put up 26 fantasy points. I think they're going to be having to throw the ball a lot in that game. Yeah,
and I think Thomas Brown's just going to try to make it a point like, hey, we're not going to let this completely fall apart, even though it already has. So, I'm fine with that. And then also I love Herbert this week. Justin Herbert versus Tampa Bay. Excuse me. Tampa Bay is giving up the single most points to quarterbacks per game basis and the 4th most yards. I just really like Justin Herbert. I like this Chargers team to beat Tampa Bay at home. So I'm all in on Justin Herbert.
Yep.
All right, let's move over to running back. Shane, who do you not like this week? Who you pumping the brakes on?
So there's a couple guys I'm worried about. One guy who you're probably thinking, I've got to start this guy based off of where I've drafted him. But I'm going to give you options later in the green light section that you could put in front of him. And that is Jonathan Taylor playing at Mile High Stadium at Denver. We got to start paying attention to what Jonathan Taylor has been giving us, first of all. 4 out of the last 5 games, he's been under 100 yards 100 yards rushing. And that's been 35 yards, 57, 48-yard days. So it's been bad. He's had 3 games that have been bad. The week before his bye, when he finished, I think, as a top 15, he got a very fluky receiving touchdown that was a busted coverage. He doesn't get hardly any receiving work now that Anthony Richardson's been back. But before that, he had been outside of the top 32 running backs. And then so that's his production. I don't think enough people are talking about. It's not been good. Now the opponent, in Denver, the Broncos are allowing, I was looking at it because I think they're pretty good. They allow the 3rd fewest yards per carry. Yep. And then over their last 3 games, they have only allowed 65 yards rushing per game. So it's been a very stingy rush defense that he's facing.
Yeah, they're a great defense. And you can't, exactly what you just stated, Jonathan Taylor hasn't been playing, up to his level that we're used to seeing him at. So, yeah, I always hate red lighting just Jonathan Taylor, but it's the right move, man. You're absolutely right. So.
I'm benching him in a 14-team league, and I'll tell you later who I'm benching him for. So
it better be someone good. I'll tell you that. It better be someone good. I am red lighting this week Bucky Irving. Now I know he's dealing with some back tightness. Now, if he does play, I'm not starting him. But even this goes along with Rachaad White too. I'm not playing either one of them against the Chargers defense. They're allowing the 3rd fewest points and the 3rd fewest touchdowns to running backs. So I'm not bullish on the Tampa Bay run game against this stingy Chargers defense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he'll probably end up playing, but who knows if he has a re-injury. So back and the opponent.
Your back injury, those are tough because you're getting hit a lot that game. So yeah, that's tough. I have quite a bit of names I got to mention here, so I'll just fire another one off real quick.
Yep.
Najee Harris at Philadelphia. We talked about Russell Wilson not being a good play. I don't think Najee is either. Philadelphia is allowing the fourth fewest points per game to running backs, the third fewest touchdowns. Not a lot of scoring on the ground for any team facing Philly. But like Najee's been good, but he hasn't been great. You know what I mean? So he only has one top 10 finish all year, and that was basically from the passing game where he caught like 5 catches in the first quarter. So I'm not very big on Najee this week. I'd be looking to sit him.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the matchup is not great.
Did you have any other ones?
Yeah, so real quickly, I'm still – I think people may be itching to put him back in, but I'm not putting in Isiah Pachecho yet. This Browns defense also pretty good. They're allowing 3.5 yards per carry over their last 3. He got more snaps last week, but it's still like a 30 to 20 snap count difference with him and Kareem Hunt. So Kareem Hunt's still being worked in. So I would be a little leery of putting in Pacheco. And then I keep going back and forth on this. I don't want to start Tyrone Tracy based off of the matchup against Baltimore. But then I was like, okay, well, his production has been in the receiving game, and Baltimore's not been great against the receiving game in the running backs.
True, very true.
But I think I would still – there's other options you could pick up and play, I think, still over Tracy.
Yeah, I mean, Tracy's been good, rushing touchdown in each of the back-to-back games. So he had over 10 targets last week. But, yeah, there's got to be better options against a good Baltimore defense. So I had him on my list as well. I got one other name, DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift and the Chicago Bears, I mean, we saw what they did in the first half last week, just absolutely nothing. And that's kind of what you have to prepare for. Like, this offense is not great. Caleb's still taking a lot of sacks. They just haven't really found their stride. They can string together a couple of good drives, but it's always in the passing game. It's never in the running game. DeAndre Swift, 3 straight games under 40 yards rushing. Minnesota is really good against the run. They're allowing the 5th fewest points. So it's just really tough sledding for DeAndre Swift.
Yep.
All right, well, let's move on to green light running backs. Shane, go ahead and kick it off. Who you got for green light running backs? And I have a feeling I know who it is.
So the first guy is the guy I am starting ahead of Jonathan Taylor in my 14-team league as my RB2, and that is Rico Dowdle.
Yeah, say it again, Rico Dowdle. Uncle Rico
Dowdle. Listen, 19, 22, 18 rush attempts in the last 3 weeks. Once the coaching staff made that declare that he was their RB1 bell cow, he's averaged over 5 yards a carry. He's been over 100 yards rushing the last 2 games. He's getting like 2 to 4 receptions per game. And then you just can't ignore the matchup against the Panthers. Over their last 3 games, they've allowed over 200 yards rushing per game.
They're giving up the most yards. They're giving up the most touchdowns. They're giving up the most fantasy points per game. They are the worst rush defense in the NFL, and it shows every single week. So, yeah, Rico Dowdle putting up over 100 yards last week. Yes, give me all the Rico Dowdle. He will be heavy in my gambling portfolio this week. That's all I'm going to say. He's on my list as well, and I knew you were going to say him, so I didn't really put together too many notes for him. But, yeah, you hit all the points. I like someone for the Jets, Braelon Allen. Okay. Now, I don't think Breece Hall is going to play this week. No. So I'm still he's still dealing with that knee injury. Coach even came out a couple hours ago and said something. He came out on Wednesday to say something about him still dealing with that injury. But, Jacksonville's giving up the second most points. They're giving up the second most points to running back. So Breece Hall to me, Braelon Allen. Braelon Allen to me is someone who can get it done. We saw him last week, 6 targets. He only had 11 carries for 43 yards, but I think this offense is really going to be moving the ball against Jacksonville this week, and I expect Braelon Allen to find the end zone at least once, maybe twice, and get quite a bit of yards. So I'm all in on Braelon Allen this week.
Yep, I had Braelon Allen also. I think when you're talking about a Tyrone Tracy, that's a guy you could bench and play Allen in front of Tracy, I think.
I agree.
Sure, based off of the matchup and what we've seen. And like he gets receiving work too. He's not just the guy who's on first and second downs. They throw in the ball. So
yeah, he's a great pass catcher. So
yeah,
I like that. I have two other guys I wanted to mention. I dug deep this week, trying to give you guys as many names as I possibly can. Chuba Hubbard, sticking with that Carolina and Dallas game. I think there's going to be a lot of rushing in that game. Chuba Hubbard, 92 yards and a touchdown against Philadelphia last week. Tough matchup, and he got it done. He has 5 touchdowns in his last 5 games. He's been very active while this Panthers team is rolling right now. They're playing really good football. They almost beat Philadelphia. They almost beat Kansas City. They beat Tampa Bay. So this is going to be a tough game for Dallas. I expect this to kind of be a shootout, but Dallas has given up the 3rd most points and the 3rd most touchdowns to running back. So I think Chuba eats that day along with Dowdle. I think they're both big plays this week.
Yep.
And then lastly, Aaron Jones against Chicago. We talked about it before. Chicago's run defense is pretty bad. 3rd most yards per game and 5th most touchdowns. So I'm just thinking Aaron Jones, who has 70 yards, over 70 yards in 3 of the last 5 games, touchdowns in each of the last 3 weeks, 1 being in the air. So Aaron Jones is going to have a big day this weekend against Chicago at home.
Yep. And the other one quick guy you want to mention, don't forget about, because he had his bye last week, like put him in your lineups. I would play him over another guy I would play over Jonathan Taylor, and that's Brian Robinson Jr. Like before that bye week, he had a 17-point day. There's no Austin Eckler still, so he's going to get some receiving work. This Saints D is really bad against running back. 4th most fantasy points allowed to running backs. 25th in the league in rushing yards allowed per game. It's just their bad defense. It's going to be a big day for Washington having the lead in the second half.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. He was very close to being on my list. I like him this week a lot. All right, let's pivot over to wide receivers. Shane, red light wide receivers. Go ahead and kick it off. What do you got?
Man, it pains me to say this because I've got him in so many leagues. But I'm going to try to get away from starting, and I am in at least one league. I'm going to try to get away from starting from Malik Nabers. Now, the stat everybody is going to throw out there is like, well, Baltimore is like bottom 3 in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. But if you look like lately, like they've been really good against the pass. Like over their last 3 games, they've only allowed 165 yards passing per game, which is 2nd best in the league. The last 3 number 1 wide receivers they faced, A.J. Brown, George Pickens, Ladd McConkey, none of them has scored against them. I think what I don't like here from Nabers is 2 things. 1, they're going back to Tommy DeVito. I mean, that's even worse than what they had, I think, than Drew Lock playing. He's battling. Kudos to him. He's battling and playing through multiple injuries.
Yeah.
But, like, there's just, because that offense is so bad, there's just so much limited touchdown opportunity and upside with him. So I'm just concerned. Like, I think this Baltimore defense is going to just really shut down this Giants offense for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, we had fun throughout the season talking about how piss poor their pass defense was been, but this is still the Baltimore Ravens, okay? They are going to beat up a team like the Giants. Yeah. This game is going to get ugly, and it's going to get ugly fast. And I agree with you. Tommy DeVito, you can't trust him. Nabers is one of those guys that, he can outperform on a bad matchup, but I wouldn't want to put my fantasy playoffs in the hands of the New York Giants offense. You know what I mean? That's just not where I want to be relying on for a good game. So I agree with you there. My red light wide receiver this week is Tank Dell. Been talking about him for a few weeks. He's taken Miami on this week. Miami's given up the fewest points and the 2nd fewest touchdowns to wide receivers. Just an ugly matchup, and Nico Collins is the only one getting the work done in Houston, and that's not even a guarantee there. But Tank Dell 3 straight weeks outside the top 30. Last week he only had 1 catch for 23 yards against Jacksonville. So you can't trust Tank Dell. He should be cemented on the bench until further notice.
Yep, I agree. Second guy I had And you might think about starting him because there's going to be no Josh Downs probably, but I'm not starting Michael Pittman Jr. in that game in Denver. Like, he's similar to Jonathan Taylor. Like, let's pay attention to how he's performing. He has not hit double-digit fantasy points in 5 out of his last 6 games. Like, and that's in PPR leagues. It's been rough. And now let's factor in the opponent again. So Denver also good against the pass, like 4th fewest yards per completion, 10th fewest touchdowns per game. And I think he probably gets the Patrick Surtain shadow coverage, which is never
definitely. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Just bad all around. Very similar to you. I'm redlining DK Metcalf. I mean, we talked about it. You can't start DK Metcalf. It's just, this is the fantasy playoffs, and you can't even put him in your fantasy lineups, which is bonkers to me. I still can't wrap my hand around that. But DK Metcalf, wide receiver 28 or worse in each of the last 4 games, only 3 touchdowns on the year. The production just hasn't been there. And it's not like the Seahawks have been that bad. I just don't understand what the problem is with DK Metcalf this year. And on top of that, he's taking on Green Bay, 5th fewest points per game, 5th fewest yards. Just tough matchup against Green Bay. And I think he gets shut down yet again.
Yep. JSN has passed him like the last 4 weeks as the number 1.
Yeah, JSN is the number 1 guy there, which I didn't think that was going to happen.
No.
Never thought that would happen. So, and then another guy I'm not too excited about this week. I mean, you could talk me into starting him, but I'm not likely going to do it. Brian Thomas Jr. taking on the New York Giants, or I'm sorry, the New York Jets. Yep. Brian Thomas Jr. only 1 touchdown in his last 5 games, so just hasn't been great. He did have a good game last week, 8 for 83, I think. But outside the top 30 in 3 out of 5 games, you just can't trust it with Mac Jones. This team is pretty bad right now, and the Giants are allowing the 4th fewest points, 4th fewest yards, and the 3rd fewest touchdowns per game. Just tough.
Yeah, and they have come out and said they expect Sauce Gardner to be back and playing this week, so that's another detriment to him.
Yeah, he's going to shadow him, and he's going to shut him down. So, but yeah, those are my red light wide receivers for the week. Shane, are you all good there?
Yeah, let's go green lighting.
Green light. Who you pumping the gas on? Who you flooring the floorboards for?
The first guy I like, a little lower probably in rankings, but I'd pull him up and start him over guys like I'd pull him up and start him over Malik Nabers this week, and that's Jameson Williams. So we used to always think of at least I did. I used to always think of Jameson Williams like, okay, it's the boom bust guy. He's got to catch the 60-yard touchdown really to have a great game. But really, like, he is kind of like shedding that label. Like, he's been getting short area targets. He's been getting more targets, 7 or more targets in 3 straight games. Like, there's been games where he's actually out targeted St. Brown on that offense.
Yeah.
And then, like, I think also, like, I like this matchup from a couple of reasons. Like, last week we saw Buffalo allow over 200 yards receiving to the Rams wide receivers. And I just think this is probably one of those very high-scoring games. If I were guessing, it's probably the highest over-under of the week. I think it's a game where Buffalo could be up or they're going back and forth. So you're looking at plenty of pass opportunities.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. And, of course, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams aren't Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, but pretty damn close with how good they are and how talented the wide receivers. So I like that. I like Jameson Williams. He has been kind of converting to more of a possessional guy than a deep threat, so to speak. So he's got a lot of tools in his bag, which I'm excited for. My green light of the week is Khalil Shakir in that same game. Okay, taking on Detroit in Detroit, over 100 yards and a touchdown last week when we all thought he was going to have a good game. He shows up. But Detroit, I mean, second most yards they're giving up to wide receivers. So I like Shakir. Like you said, this should be a sneaky good game. Probably not even a sneaky good game, just a blatantly obvious, really good game. So I'm cool with starting Shakir this week against Detroit. And then also Jakobi Meyers. I know we've been talking about him quite a bit lately. He's versing Atlanta, and Atlanta just got torched from Jordan Jefferson and Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson.
I call
them Jordan Jefferson.
Jefferson.
I mean those two guys, Jordan Jefferson. It's like Pooker Nup.
Yeah,
Pooker Nup. Those guys are dominating over there. So yeah, they just torched Atlanta. I think Jakobi Meyers, he's double-digit targets in 4 of the last 5 games, which is very intriguing to me. And Atlanta giving up the 3rd most points per game and the most touchdowns to wide receivers. So I think Jakobi Meyers finds the end zone. He has a big game, another game with double-digit targets. I mean, how can you not put him in your lineup?
Yep, I think he's, no matter if they're starting even Desmond Ridder, I think he's safe because of the targets.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, Desmond Ridder is kind of trash, but all right. And then who else you got?
2 other guys real quick that are a little bit lower. Another guy I would start over like a Malik Nabers, and that's Thursday night, and that's Juwan Jennings.
Oh, yeah.
Like this Rams defense has been pretty bad. They're allowing 30 fantasy points per game to wide receivers. He led the team in targets last week with 8. 3 out of the last 5 games, he's been a top 15 receiver. Let's not forget what he did in that game last time he played the Rams. He went for 11 catches, 175 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So I was honestly surprised. Brock Purdy looked much better last week. I thought maybe his shoulder would still be an issue, but he looked a lot better. It looked fine. So Jennings is the number 1 receiving target there.
Here's the thing about Brock Purdy, which I find fascinating. I wish Coles could be on for this because he was a proponent for one of the naysayers for Brock Purdy. Yeah. He doesn't have Trent Williams. He doesn't have Brandon Ayuk.
No.
He doesn't have Christian McCaffrey. No. And everyone said that he is so good because he has these guys. Now he still has Debo, but Debo is dealing with a lot of his own issues. By the way, did you see that tweet? Yeah. Did you see him on Twitter saying, "Hey, I don't have problems. I'm just not getting the ball." Yeah. And the community guidelines saying, "No, you actually have the most drops on the team."
Yeah, I always like when the community guidelines drop that after a tweet. Yeah,
that was savage and that was hilarious. But anyway, my point is that Brock Purdy is showing that he deserves this contract and he can play despite not having the giant weapons on the team that are ready to go. So. Very impressive for last game against Chicago. Yep. I couldn't. George Kittle, another bad call on my part during draft season when I said I wouldn't draft George Kittle. God, that blew up in my face so hard. George Kittle is leading the league in tight end yards, and he's just dominating. So I will eat my words on that one. Just highlighting my losses in this episode. This has been a brutal week for me, but yeah. Juwan Jennings, the number 1 receiver for San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah. Real quick, I'm going to marry up with your Aaron Rodgers and go ahead start another old guy with him, Davante Adams.
Yep.
11 targets a game over his last 5 is what he's averaging. He's had over 40 combined fantasy points in his last 2. And then the Jaguars, as you mentioned, just an awful defense against the pass.
I'm even fine starting Garrett Wilson too. I mean, both of them should be in lineups this week. So I completely agree with that. But all right, well, let's kick it over to red light tight ends. Shane, who are you pumping the brakes on? Tight end, very important position here in fantasy football. Who do you not like this week?
The guy I don't like, but I'm still seeing him started in multiple leagues. Even against me last week, he was started. Guys, stop starting Kyle Pitts. Go pick up somebody off the waiver wire. Like, over his last 5 games, he's only averaged 3 points a game. He got 6 targets last week, but he is not doing anything with them. I really don't know why the production has not been there, but I don't care. You drafted him in round 5 of drafts and kept him on your rosters. We are in round 1 playoffs. You cannot take a 2-point or 3-point game from your tight end. There are plenty of options to go pick up and put in place.
But Shane, the Vegas Raiders, they're a good matchup for tight ends.
No,
you still don't think Pitts is going to be trusted? I mean, I agree with you. You can't trust Pitts.
No,
he on any given week he'll give you a goose egg and just give you no points. So I agree with you. He's still on one of my benches. I have no idea why. I might as well drop him now going into the playoffs. So I agree with you there. I'm going to go ahead and red light Cade Otton against the Los Angeles Chargers. They're giving up the fewest touchdowns, the fewest points per game to tight ends. And, good game last week, but the 2 games prior has been like tight end 29 or worse. Mm-hmm. And now that Mike Evans is back, Cade Otton just kind of, falls to the wayside a little bit with Baker Mayfield. So, he's still going to get a few targets, but I don't expect him to score a touchdown on the team that's given up the fewest touchdowns. So it's just kind of going to be a bad week for Cade Otton.
Yep, I agree.
All right, well, green light tight end, Shane, who do you got? Who's the green light streamer? Who are you digging deep for in the player well on the waiver wire? If somebody needs streaming tight ends, I know you got a good one for us.
Yeah, so last week we gave you the Grant Calcaterra wine mixer pickup of the week.
He caught a touchdown.
I am going to dig I didn't think I could go deeper than I did last week with Calcaterra, but I am going much deeper this week.
Much deeper.
Deeper. I am going with Stone Smartt of the Chargers.
Stone Smartt.
All right. Listen, let's talk about a couple things. One, Will Dissly is going to miss a couple weeks. He hurt his shoulder in that game against Kansas City, so he's out. 2, Ladd McConkey could be questionable again this week. He's dealing with a knee injury and a shoulder injury. So if he happens to miss again, that's even more targets open. But even besides that, we're going to look at last week he had 3 catches for 58 yards. He's a down-the-field threat. When we watched that game, he got open down the field. We know how they love throwing to the tight ends. Then lastly, let's talk about the matchup. Tampa Bay allowing the 6th most fantasy points this year to tight ends.
Yeah, I mean, you're on the money, right? You're taking these players that are getting increased opportunities because of injury on their team, right? Calcaterra last week with Goddard out, and now Stone Smartt with Dissly out. I had no idea who Stone Smartt was last week. I had bet on Dissly to have a good game, which I'm sure a lot of people did, and that didn't work out because he got injured. But you start seeing this guy Stone Smartt all over the field, catching like 4 or 5 balls. So I was like, oh wow, who the hell is this? And here we go. He's on your green light streamer tight end of the week. I love it. It's such a smart play, and after we're done with here, I'm gonna go look to pick him up in that league I have with Kyle Pitts. So I'm gonna take your advice there. My green light tight end this week is someone who didn't have a great week last week and just came back from injury, but it's Jake Ferguson. I think I want players in this Dallas-Carolina game. I talked about how I'm really excited to watch this game. I think it's going to be a sneaky good game. But I think Jake Ferguson has a good chance to score some big fantasy points this week. Carolina's given up the most points, the most touchdowns to tight ends. It's a picture-perfect matchup for a tight end. So I think Jake Ferguson, who Cooper Rush loves targeting tight ends, right? And I think Ferguson's going to have a good game. So he's my green light tight end of the week.
Yeah, I think what you have to like about last week, it wasn't a great game, but he got 6 targets. And that was the first game back from his concussion, so he kind of took back the number 1 role away from Schoonmaker. So you gotta like that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, I think that about does it for our Week 15 playoffs, Week 1 red light, green light episode. It's been fun. I hope everybody out there wins their fantasy matchups. If you guys have any questions, feel free to hit us up on Twitter at FantasyTrucker, at @SMcCormick_FF. And make sure you join us live on Sunday at 10 a.m. right here on YouTube and Twitter. And come talk some football with the boys. We appreciate you guys very much. And buckle up.